Hello and welcome to our episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. I am absolutely delighted to be joined in the studio today and meeting for the first time Nick Reed from Bizzdesign. Nick, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Great to be here.
Listen, lovely to have you in. We've had a little bit of a preamble and you were talking about, has any of this been covered on the show before? And actually what I loved about it is there are there's episodes that cover some of the stuff you're talking about, but actually the merge of some really interesting stuff together is the first time I think we've had it on the show. So we're a world first here, Nick. I'm looking forward to what you're going to be talking about. But there's lots to be getting into. Change and transformation is a subject which I think is dear to everyone's heart at the moment. Alongside that, the most talked about subjects in the last couple of years is AI. And you're at the very heart of both of them, so a great position to be. Nick, give us a bit of an intro. Tell us about yourself, and then tell us about Bizzdesign.
Okay. So Nick Reed, Chief Strategy Officer at Bizzdesign. So in my role, I work on our strategy development, mergers and acquisitions, in collaboration with our private equity investor. Things like analyst relations and our customer advisory council, and provide executive sponsorship on some of our key partner and customer relationships. And
you came through from a customer background, didn't you? You were Chief Customer Officer before this Chief Strategy Officer as well.
Correct, right? Yeah. So when I joined Bizzdesign 9 years ago, I joined as Chief Customer Officer, so running the customer-facing functions, and transitioned into this role about 4 years ago.
And that sort of customer council that you talk about, the terminology you used was advisory council. I've been speaking to a lot of people about this recently, and I think that's such an important part of it. And I think businesses, particularly in the SaaS space, who are listening to their customers and adapting to their customers and utilising that sort of thing. Tell me a little bit. I know we're transgressing already from where we wanted to talk about, but just give me a quick overview of how that's working for you and what you like to get out of it.
So for us, it's an opportunity to hear from our strategic customers about the big picture trends in terms of their needs, how they see the market evolving, and to really take that moment to step back from the nitty-gritty day-to-day blocking and tackling and look at the big picture. So it's an opportunity for our customers to influence our thinking, how we see the evolving market, the space we're in, and to have some influence on our direction and our product strategy. And it's an opportunity for us to play back to our customers in terms of our thinking, the options we're thinking about, and get their feedback on that. But also it's an opportunity for those customers to share best practice amongst themselves, share what's working, what's not. It's a safe space, so everything stays internal. We don't put anything out publicly from that. So it's a really good opportunity to have those strategic discussions where people can really, speak their mind and we can have full and frank conversations.
Yeah, and you get so much back from it. I think it's such a good idea, and I think we're seeing more and more companies adopt that sort of thought process at the moment, and the invaluable nature of how it allows people to adapt and evolve as the business. And I think, from the days where people were sat there and saying, right, technology is all about giving our solution and imposing it on the customer. The customer's will is now so much more entwined into, and I think we've seen more and more of that as the digital world has become a lot more driven and agile in terms of how it comes through. So love that. Anyway, sorry, we'll get back onto track now. So at Bizzdesign, you're talking about fast transformation more effectively as a general sort of headline. So talk to us a little bit about that, what that means, and who Bizzdesign are. You've already talked about PE and growth and everything like that. Give us the backstory of the business.
So we're all about helping our customers transform faster and more effectively. And if you think about any organization needs to respond to events in the world, in their market. Could be supply chain disruptions, could be geopolitical events, wars, or the introduction and emergence of new technology. All this stuff has an impact on their enterprise, their business, and they need to determine how they respond to that and act on it. And what typically happens, and the larger and more complex the organisation, the more acute the challenge is. They'll formulate a response, having a strategy to respond to market events or act on an opportunity they see, and then when it gets to execution, things start getting a bit more complex and things start slowing down, and it's like, well, what's the impact of doing this, or what do we need to go and change, and people need to start running around and getting the information to support those kinds of decisions. And it's the complexity of organizations that makes this super difficult to do. And basically it's the fundamental problem is silos, and we kind of say silos that eat strategy for breakfast, because it's one thing to have a strategy, know where you want to go, but if you've got limited visibility of what's out there, what's affected by this change, you've potentially got multiple initiatives running that may conflict.
Yeah.
So you're implementing a new solution. Oh well, that server that we were going to integrate with, that thing's been earmarked for decommissioning in 3 months' time. So do we wait for that? Do we just plow on and then have to go back and rework it? All the compliance stuff around it, and so very quickly these initiatives get bogged down in either analysis paralysis or data gathering or replanning, and it gets slower, gets more expensive, unplanned delays and costs, and that's what eats your strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
So we're all about helping our customers deal with that challenge.
Go into those silos, because I think that if you look at various different industries, you'll see different levels of silo in different places, and we'll talk about the FS space. But it reminds me many years ago when I worked in the public sector arena for a short period, and was doing some recruitment for those businesses, and they had exactly the same mirrored team which no one knew about at various different stages, and there was a massive inefficiency in that sort of space. But I think when you come over to the FS space, you think it's a lot more linear and where people are sort of sat. But at the same sort of time, you're absolutely right. You look at various ideas that people have, and they conflict at various different stages. So how do those silos sort of come about, and what do they actually look like in practice?
So if you think about any large financial services organisation, there's probably different lines of business. So you might have retail, commercial, investment banking, whatever, private banking, insurance, asset management, and there's different chains of command for each of those. So they probably have that visibility going up the chain of command, but not necessarily transversal across all of those different lines of business. Then you've got different countries, people operating different markets, different locations. They may not have the visibility of what's going on elsewhere. You've got different domains and portfolios. So you've got customer domain, payments domain, risk domain, and again these functional silos where information may not be traversing across these different areas. And there's a real quote from one of our customers said, we invest so many billions of dollars every year in trying to transform. We're pretty sure we waste half of it. The problem is we don't know which half.
Yeah.
And they said, when we build a mobile banking application, we might be doing it for the 20th time, just because we don't know what everyone else did.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one horror story, a company that I know of, it grew through acquisition, did over 20 acquisitions over a number of years, ended up with over 120 ERP systems.
Actually, you told me that beforehand. That's absolutely staggering, isn't it?
So, when you need to change something about your payments processing, all of a sudden, you can see the potential scale of the challenge.
Yeah, yeah. And you talk about the strategy to execution gap, which comes in there, and I love that actually how that's sort of said, because there are best laid plans in every single business, and I think these are, and I think about it myself. I've been doing a lot of planning, 26 planning at the moment, and again, look, I'm really very robust about the strategy and the direction we're moving on. I'm very excited about where we want to go, and I just think this execution gap sometimes about best laid plans is really interesting. We're in a volatile time. I was at an event yesterday with the deputy chief editor of The Economist magazine, who actually led, I'm very pleased to say, quite a positive picture about where we're heading as a humanity and economically and everything else around that, which was nice to hear because I didn't expect that to be coming from The Economist. But I think they're about all these different things. I think about this strategy and execution gap, and I think about how people can do it better. And this is where you come in from a really important angle. So tell us a little bit about what that means and looks like.
So our approach, you can think of as a bit like air traffic control for the enterprise.
Yeah.
So when you're doing air traffic control, you've got planes in the air, you need to know where they are, but you also need to know where they're going to avoid collisions. And so
the most stressful job in the world, apparently.
Absolutely. And we're doing something similar by helping organizations understand what they've got in terms of what business activities they do, so what business capabilities they're operating, how they're operating them in terms of business processes and the people and the data and the technology that's involved in those processes, to operate those capabilities, and then also overlaying that with strategic goals. So what are the important capabilities to enable realization of the business benefits related to those strategies, and then overlaying the change portfolio of projects or work streams, programs that are affecting all of those moving parts of the enterprise. So once you've got visibility of what's there, you can start understanding, where do we have duplication? Where do we have multiple processes that do the same thing? Where do we have multiple applications that support the same activities? Where have we got multiple projects or initiatives that are in pursuit of similar strategic goals? Or where are we spending money and time and effort on things that actually don't advance our strategic goals? So once you get it all together into a repository where you can query, analyze it, get insights from it, you can start making sense of it, managing that complexity, and you can make better decisions about how you start changing and anticipate the impacts and dependencies of change, so you can start avoiding those unplanned delays and cost overruns because you just didn't know that application you're going to depend on was going to be decommissioned.
Yeah, I think that's really relevant, isn't it? The sort of cost overruns and the delays and the under budgeting. And I actually think about, I'm stunned, and I can't remember the exact data and numbers, but I'm stunned about the whole failed transformation economy that we live in, about how much money goes into transformation projects that never actually get completed. And a load of that is 100, when you said the analogy first to me about air traffic control, the collisions that you have in that sort of process is off the scale, and you can see it. And I think that let's enter stage right, the everyone's favourite topic this year, which is AI. And I think when we are talking about boardrooms over the last 2 years, I don't think there's a boardroom that hasn't got AI on the agenda in a fairly heavy way. And I also think that despite the fact it's on the agenda in a very heavy way in most companies, people are sort of throwing out there and saying, we need to be AI, we need to have AI in our strategy, we need to be looking at all of this sort of stuff, despite actually knowing what they want to look at, and in many instances sort of struggling to articulate between automation and AI in the first place anyway. So you've got a board talking to a technology team demanding efficiencies out of AI, whilst also not necessarily having a complete overview of what that means and what that looks like and why and where. Recognising that everyone's in a race, recognising that no one wants to be left behind, recognising the opportunities of productivity gains and efficiency gains. That creates a massive opportunity for silos. That creates a massive opportunity for failed transformation projects. That's got a try and fail story written all over it through. So tell us a little bit about what's happening in that sort of arena at the moment.
So as you said, it's the same challenges, but kind of on steroids.
Yeah.
The pressure and the urgency around moving forward with AI is huge. It is the number one C-level priority in, pick your analyst report, they all say the same thing right now. And almost to the point where everything else is getting drowned out from that AI imperative. And all of those same challenges around complexity and being able to act on it and execute are kind of amplified by it, where there's business stakeholders saying, great, we want to do this. We want to be more efficient and productive and more profitable. We want to move faster. We want to have a better customer experience, employee experience, instant responses all the time. And the opportunity is there, and business people want to act on it. And so the pressure is on IT teams to say, well, give us the tools to go out and run experiments, develop prototypes, try things out, but also give us the guidelines, what shouldn't we do? What can we do? What can't we do? What are the tools? And also give us some inspiration. Sometimes you've got the blank sheet of paper problem. People want to act on it, but they don't know what they can do and what the art of the possible is. And you need some knowledge to help people think, beyond just automating that process that already exists. It's like maybe you need to fundamentally change the process, fundamentally change how you operate a capability. So if you don't know what the possibility is, it's really hard to make progress. And of course, IT teams don't necessarily have all of those skills. They don't necessarily have a bunch of AI deep experts on the team. And if they do, they're probably being poached by tech companies with very deep pockets. And so there's a shortage of knowledge and skills, and IT teams are struggling to keep up with this demand for tools, guidelines, expertise, and assistance for those business stakeholders. And so what happens then is people start getting the credit cards out and going out and buying, their own tools, or even worse, playing with free stuff. Where, of course, if you're not paying for it, your data kind of is the product. And there are stories about teams, product strategy, product teams putting their product plans into free LLMs, and that information turning up on the public internet soon after. So, it's a real risk. And of course, once people start...
Driven by wanting to be part of that conversation, right?
Absolutely. And not wanting to wait for, internal teams to catch up. And so once people start buying off-the-shelf SaaS applications, that's where you start getting into shadow IT or shadow AI, in this case, where something great might be happening, but no one else has got visibility of it in the organization. It may be outside of the typical compliance processes. And all of the same stuff that applies to, standard IT and digitalization applies to AI. Is it secure? Is it confidential? What's the supply chain of that vendor? Are all of their suppliers secure and compliant? But on top of that, you've got additional risks around AI models. How do you know those AI models are providing accurate information? Are they going to hallucinate? What kind of testing and validation is being done on that? And so there's additional risks and compliance aspects on top of the standard ones.
It makes it a very sort of interesting bit, because you talk there into an area which I think is really interesting, where you're having IT teams that aren't necessarily skilled with the speed of change that's happening in the area, and they're being asked to do things out of their lane. And when you get people doing things out of their lane, there's an element of stress around that comes in, that sort of creates a sort of lack of psychological safety that gets people very stressed in what they're doing. Worse is that when they come in and they're replaced by people who do know what they're doing within that sort of, or allegedly know what they're doing within that sort of space. You've got this friction, this cultural friction of what can happen. So it's this, alongside all of the atomic nature of everything that can happen where you blow up by utilising and implementing the wrong AI strategy, alongside that you've got this internal cultural friction that comes alongside that as well, that can lose all your best people at the same sort of time. So it becomes a real problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's a governance aspect to this where it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. And governance often gets a bad press, and it's a dirty word in some organisations, but it's fundamentally
some
about
people in some organisations.
yeah. But it's fundamentally about what are the decisions we need to be making, who should be accountable for those decisions, and you need different modes of governance in different situations. So if it's all about speed, going fast, and it's maybe relatively low risk areas of the business, well, great, you can have maybe a lighter touch governance where if teams are using the preferred technologies or whatever, great, get on with it, go as fast as you can. It's actually an area where AI can potentially help a lot to be assessing what all the teams are doing across the portfolio of change, and understanding, well, where do we need to be having a greater interest, where can we let people crack on and get on with it, and auto approve as long as people are within some broad guidelines. Actually, when you get into agentic AI, where you've got autonomous agents running around, there's a very real question about how do you govern that stuff, and people starting to talk about governance as code or policy as code, where you actually need to encode your governance guidelines up front when you're designing these AI agents. So because you cannot enforce at the speed the agents are going if you're doing it with humans. So it's a very interesting area. But then, of course, if you're in a highly controlled environment, payments, money, personal information, strategy, very sensitive information, you may need a more control-based governance where you bring in the no police to say, well, until this is approved, you don't carry on and execute on it. So I think it's getting the right mode of governance in the right kind of circumstances is super important. And of course, in order to do that, you got to understand the context of what's going on, what kind of data's involved, what kind of people are using it, and that's where you need that kind of architectural visibility that tools like Bizzdesign give you.
And I think that's an interesting part, the way it comes, because when you mention here like Bizzdesign coming in there to be able to give you that, give us some practical examples of how and where that's sort of come through and help cut through the noise and help establish that sort of structure and help people through. What are some choppy waters out there, really?
Well, I mean, so taking the AI example forward, organizations, they've got lots of people trying stuff out, and so let's say financial services company X, customer service is a big deal, they want to have the best customer experience, and they've got various different customer teams out there experimenting to improve how they service their customers and deal with incoming questions or whatever. If you don't have visibility of what's going on, they might be trying the same thing and reinventing the wheel multiple times. It sounds very simple, but if you haven't got that visibility, you just don't know. And then the flip side of that is somebody might do something really, really great, really cool, that delivers lots of value, improves customer sat, massively improves the efficiency, productivity of that customer service. If the rest of the business doesn't know about it, they're doing great things in a silo, but you're not realizing the benefits of that enterprise-wide. Or you may have an initiative where they're saying, great, we've got this fantastic idea, we know it's got massive value, but what tools can we use? What data can we use or not use? And they're stuck because they don't want to make a mistake. And obviously that can be a very career limiting thing if your customer's information is suddenly sprawled around, or you get some kind of...
Career limiting is a very polite way of putting it, isn't it?
Or some kind of hallucination that says something really bad to a customer. And so you've got this combination of bad things can happen if you go too fast outside the guardrails, but bad things happen if people are too constrained or too timid to take that step forward, or don't feel they've got the support they need to do it.
It's a real knife edge, isn't it? Actually, it's a really interesting point of what you were talking about there on a wider scale, because I think about I think a lot about that sort of whole concept of nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM, and as a metaphor for the industry as a whole, where I think in financial services you've got a conservative industry for obvious reasons. There's regulation, there's risk, there's governance, there's a lot of that within there because it's important to have that. So what you're looking for is an industry there which is ultra competitive, with margin pressure all the way through it, with depending on what area of financial services you're looking at, there is always a premium on speed. There is an ever-growing emphasis on efficiency and resilience. There's a ongoing sort of user experience sort of play, and obviously on top of that, there's a desire to increase productivity.
Yeah, and I would say also a heightened awareness of risk.
Yeah.
The financial industry understands risk very well in general.
Absolutely. And so when you're talking about understanding risk on one side, and the other side you're looking for speed and efficiency and control on the other, and getting things done at pace and having trading advantage, those two clash at various different stages. And what generally tends to happen is that I think projects take a little bit longer because of that reason, and everyone being very cautious about it. It is an industry which is known for hire and fire, and because it's known for hiring and firing, it's got that sort of same element to it. People are sometimes a little bit cautious about what and where they do things. So when you've got the opportunity to come in there and help navigate people through that sort of stuff, to invest in this pressure to gamble a little bit more in an industry which also paradoxically is all about gambling at various different stages at the same sort of time. It sort of frowns on that and has ultimate sanctions around what happens with it as well. So you've got this sort of real counterintuitive sort of balance that comes into that needs something to cut through the complexity. And I guess from everything you're saying, that's where you can come in and add real value.
Yeah, and actually, fun fact for you, which I forgot to mention in our preamble, I started my career as a financial journalist, writing about financial derivatives.
Okay.
And in that space, and this is going back quite some years when it was relatively new stuff.
Yeah.
You'd have CFOs or treasurers who had exposure to foreign exchange risk or whatever, and there'd be derivative contracts, FX swaps or whatever pitched to them, and they'd say, well, it's easier for me just to do nothing, and then I'm avoiding the risk of entering into these risky derivative contracts.
Yeah.
But actually, no decision is still a decision. You're still taking a position on being long XYZ exchange rate. And I think there's an analogy to that in architecture terms, when if you're building a new solution, for example, you can just crack on and build a new thing, meet the needs of the business, great. But without having an architectural perspective on the context in which that solution is being built, you don't know if you're reinventing the wheel and you've already got something that might serve that purpose perfectly well. You don't know if you're introducing additional complexity into the IT estate, in terms of there's new technologies coming in where you've got plenty of perfectly good technologies that could be used for that already. Are you fragmenting data sources, whatever? So having an architectural perspective and context for what you do in terms of new initiatives allows you to make smarter decisions about how you do that. And they might be a bit suboptimal for just meeting the needs of that one stakeholder, but in the big scheme of things, you might be improving your architectural profile of the business as a whole. And so investing a bit of effort up front to understand that can have massive long-term benefits by building a more, agile, efficient, resilient organization for the long term. And that's where this comes into play. And it's easy to say, I don't need any of that. I'm just going to build a thing to meet the needs of the business. It's just the same as that CFO saying, no, I'm not going to enter into that swap contract to hedge my FX risk. I'm just going to live with it. So, and of course, in a short-term industry, it might be someone else's problem in the future, but it's still a problem. And I think this is where our kind of tooling comes in. And in the context of AI, we offer a proposition called AI portfolio management, where it's a means of just collecting together all of those AI initiatives, who's doing what, for what purpose, so what business capability is it trying to improve, what tools are being used, what data is involved, What's the compliance status of that tool? What's the cost? Just so you can get everything in one place. Start seeing, well, where are we duplicating effort, reinventing the wheel? Where are we potentially doing cool stuff that doesn't advance our real strategic business goals? And where have we got the risks? And where have we got the cost? And where's the ROI? So it's portfolio management, but for everything you're doing with AI. So you can start focusing on what matters, scaling what works rapidly across the organization, but also doing that with visibility of the risks and the compliance status of all that stuff.
It makes absolute sense, doesn't it, in terms of where you're looking at. And I love the fact of it's a complex issue that seems to be suddenly turned into a real straightforward sort of process in terms of where you're going. So tell us a little bit about who Bizzdesign is helping in this space at the moment and how.
So we mostly deal with large, complex organizations. Financial services is a particular area where that's
your biggest area, you were saying,
and it's our biggest market. So a very significant part of our customer base is in banking, insurance, financial services, and we're typically helping them deal with all of these kinds of issues. There's ever increasing compliance demands. You've got operational resilience, AI acts, all of this stuff.
It's not getting easier, is it?
No, but also the imperative to digitally transform and get AI into part of that is bigger than ever. And the opportunities are definitely there. Case in point, former colleague of mine started a new company a couple of years ago. It's not financial services, but it's dealing with AI-powered customer service. Gone to 0 to over 100 million recurring revenue in under 2 years.
Wow.
The opportunities are there. And it's how do you execute on that?
There you go. So if people want to have enjoyed it as much as I have hearing about all this today, what's the best way for them to reach out and get in touch with you?
So they can visit the website, bizzdesign.com, look me up on LinkedIn, Nick Reed, contacts their local account manager if they already are in the family. Look us up on LinkedIn, social media.
It's all there.
It's all there.
And there's some really good conversation to be having as well. I think this is a fascinating area which I think doesn't necessarily sometimes get the airtime which it needs to. And when you do think about that sort of loss of the transformation world and the complexity that sort of comes into it, I love the fact this comes at this from the angle you are and helping people cut through the noise. So, Nick, an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Loved it. Thanks very much for having me on.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.